Welcome back to FTx Academy. I'm Zach. Today, we'll be looking at inventory counts. Inventory counts is where you're actually going to count the inventory in your store. At FastTrax, we count inventory with our cycle count and spot check modules. While they're very similar, there are some important differences between the two. With cycle counts, it's a traditional count. We're using the handheld scanner or the control center application. You enter the quantity of all the items you want to count. When you're done, you evaluate the worksheet and choose Reconcile, which applies the inventory counts. With spot checks, there is no reconciliation. You simply scan the item, enter the quantity, and that quantity is immediately applied to the system. Both cycle counts and spot checks rely on inventory definitions. We believe that if you're going to count the store, you should do it in manageable chunks. Don't try to count the entire store in one day. If it takes 8 hours to count, break it into small 1-hour chunks. Those chunks are generally based on the location of items or the category of items. But no matter what, always make it manageable for your cashiers. So what we found is if they count continually all day without a break, when it comes time to reconcile, they're really done. They're just going to accept whatever numbers are there without any investigation. While if they're going in smaller chunks, they seem to spend more time on the reconciliation and evaluate what's going on, which leads to a better inventory result. So to create these definitions, we use point of sale, inventory counts. From here, we would choose inventory definitions. So we really have two types of definitions. We have our traditional filters, which would be like a category filter, a department filter, so on and so forth. We also have our advanced definitions. So let's look at some of those. To create a definition, I would choose Add New. The first thing we're going to give it is a name. So here we'll call this FTx Academy. The next prompt is the acceptable days since last count. This field is used as a metric in one of our reports to evaluate how long it's been since you've counted items. Here you would enter in a value such as 30 days, 60 days, 90 days that you expect to go between counts. If it exceeds this number, then it's going to be flagged for review. Next, you would choose your filter. The first is the filter types. As mentioned, we have our traditional filters such as category, department, manufacturer, etc. To use one of these, I would choose the type and then choose manage and the items I want in the filter. The second type of filter is the dynamic filters. These are things such as top selling products or negative items or negative transaction items. And these are just like they sound. So top selling products would be the top X products where you define X over a period of time. Items from a negative transaction would be any item involved in what we deem as a negative transaction. That would be a transaction with a void, a cancel, a return, etc. Other dynamic options are variance from cycle counts. This would be any item that was counted on a previous cycle count but had a variance. Items on adjustment, this would be any items on an open adjustment. Items on transfers, this would be any item on an open transfer. And finally, items on invoices, and this would be any item on an open invoice. So we're going to use a traditional filter. We'll choose filter by tag. From our list of tags, we'll find our FTx Academy tag. Once we're happy with the definition, we can save it. Definitions are like reports. There's no right or wrong one to use. They're definitely very personal. We also support definitions by location. So if you've built out a planogram for a store, you can use that as your inventory definition. Once your definition's been saved, it's ready to be used in both cycle counts and spot checks. Additionally, if you prefer not to use a definition, both can be used without a definition filter. So let's take a look at cycle counts. The default module is cycle counts. Here, we're going to see any open counts You can also use the header grid to filter. The grid is going to show you the definition used, the employee that started the count, the location, the variance, when it was started, and, if applicable, when it was applied. Let's look at the details of this open definition. When opening a cycle count, the grid is going to show me by default all products. I can also filter to counted products, uncounted products, or products with a variance. Our grid is also color-coded. The white means the item was counted and there was no variance. Or red means it was counted but there was a variance. And yellow means it was counted and there was a variance, however, it's a roll-up variance. And what is meant by that is that we use a parent-child relationship. So in this case, we have Cliff Bars. We sell them by the box, and we also sell them by the singles. Those are related to each other. 5 singles equal 1 box. So in this case, we expected to have 5 boxes, but we only had 4. Therefore, we were short 1 box. However, we were supposed to have 3 singles, but we had 8. So we were over 5 singles. So minus 1 parent plus 5 children. In our world, that's a wash. If you want to ignore those, you can turn on roll-up view. By turning it on, it's going to show you that variance is actually a $0 variance. From this screen, I can also adjust the quantity. So I'm going to see the backroom count and the floor count, and I can manually make an adjustment in the user adjust count. To make that adjustment, I click and enter the adjustment quantity. So in this case, we'll change this to 1. As you can see, once I changed it to 1, now this item is out of balance and it shows me it has a variance. Therefore, it's red. Changing it back to 0 will return it to no variance. So some of my favorite features here are drilling into a problem item and looking at what's going on with it. So this item here, this sparkling water, it's red. The system expected us to have 19. That was the snapshot quantity. However, we only counted 17. So let's try and figure out what's going on with this item. So the first thing I can do is click on the item itself. It's going to bring up a dialog box showing me all the activity that happened during the count. So here I see that this item was scanned by Zach at 2:58 and he entered 17. If the item was scanned more than once, it's going to show me each individual scan. Also, if the item had any inventory movement during the count, such as a sale or an invoice or a breakdown, those would show here. I don't see anything that sticks out here, so let's take a deeper look. I can also right-click on the item and choose Item Analysis. Now this is going to pop up a filtered view of the item analysis at that location. So it's going to show me all inventory activity over the past 30 days. I can also dial the date range back if I prefer. This would be any sort of snapshots, cycle count, spot checks, sales, invoices, basically anything that affects inventory all in one view. So this is great to see if someone forgot to enter an invoice or a transfer wasn't made. So that would be the reason for the variance. Once we've analyzed this, if needed to, we can make a user adjustment. But if we're fine with everything, we can choose Save Reconcile. So as the screen tells me, this is going to apply this to inventory, and it takes effect immediately, giving the user one last confirmation before continuing. So once reconciled, this inventory becomes read-only. No adjustments can be made to it. So any sort of inventory movement will now show up in the transaction logs. Now let's look at spot checks. So we'll navigate to point of sale, inventory counts. From here, we'll choose spot checks from the module list. This is going to show us a list of spot checks that are currently outstanding. I can filter all the headers to dial into the data I want. Here, we have a no definition spot check done at location 20. As mentioned earlier, spot checks don't require reconciliation. They're initiated on the handheld and completed on the handheld. So from the control center, the only thing we can do is view and print the spot check. So let's dial into this one. So here we can see the 3 items on the spot check definition. 2 of them were counted, 1 of them had a variance. As you can see, I have 1 variance product with a variance dollar of $4.62. So that's it for inventory counts. Hope this helps you make your stores more efficient. Thanks for hanging out with us today.